Hello, one and all, and welcome to the podcast we call the Fantastival with myself, Steve Nussbaum. In the podcast, I invite my guests to come on and talk to me all about their musical taste, their memories, their experiences, and collate their fancy festivals, which I have christened Fantastivals. I hope everyone is well as they're listening to this. I hope you've all had a great Easter. It's been a while. The podcast has been gone for the last, 3 or 4 weeks. I've been away. I went to Butlins, had a great time with the family. I'm all refreshed, and I must say before we start this episode, just a massive thank you to Chris and Faye from Speak Easy Fanzine. They were my last guests. That was such an enjoyable podcast. They were both so passionate about music, and the way they spoke about their fanzine and their own actual festival was amazing. Not to mention, they both collated what were absolutely epic fantasy festivals. So Chris, Faye, thank you so much for coming on. That is an episode I'll always remember and treasure to heart. So that was the last episode in our 150s. And with this one, we go on to 160s with episode number 160. And for this one, I'm delighted to introduce guitarist for the excellent band Little Man Tate. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Maz Marriott.
Hi, Stephen. Nice to be with you tonight.
Oh, Maz, such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. I can't wait to have you on talking all about Little Man Tate and your musical memories and experiences and your fantasy festival. But before we do, Maz, I always like to check in with my guests from a mental health perspective to make sure that everyone is doing well, everyone's okay. So to start off with, Maz, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, I'm just having a quiet Monday evening. I've got my daughter next door who's had it on school holidays at the minute. She's only 6, so we've been chilling today in the woods, and I've cooked some tea, done some good dad jobs, so I've kept myself busy, and now I can relax with a chat with yourself.
Love to hear it. So, Maz, I always like to crack on from people with an early age. So, what do you remember, I guess, about your earliest musical memories?
Yeah, my earliest musical memories, probably my dad driving me to school, and you know when you're just a bit bored in the car and you start looking around and looking in, glove boxes and things like that. I think I pulled out this yellow cassette, and I said, "Oh, what's this?" And he said, "Oh, that's the Beatles greatest hits, 20 greatest hits or something." But it was a yellow cassette. I thought it was pretty cool, so I put that on, and the Yellow Submarine came on, and just remember hearing all these Beatles songs. I must have been 5 or 6, and just loving the sort of playfulness of them, and like a lot of Beatles songs do have a bit of a childlike quality to them, don't they? I just remember thinking, wow, I didn't have any idea like what a band was or anything like that, but I just remember it being quite catchy tunes and ones you could sing along to, and just have a bit of always a reference back to that whenever I get that question. I think I must have been, like I say, about 5 or 6 at the time.
And then when did you buy your first record and single, and do you remember what they were?
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of music in the house, so my dad played guitar, but he never sang, he unless he was doing something daft like Postman Pat or whatever. He wasn't in any way like a singer-songwriter. He'd just sit there and whistle out and strum a few chords in the background. I used to love hearing that. And then when I got older, it was weird because I did learn how to play the guitar at school, and I never really enjoyed it, and it was too formal and it was too theory-based. So it wasn't until I got to about 15 or 16 and I met John, the singer of the Little Man Tate, I actually thought more about music and how you can actually go out there and buy it. Unless you had Top of the Pops on, or you were just sort of coming into that MTV age where you could watch videos. You never really invested in it. So when you actually have a bit of money at that age, you think, what am I going to spend it on? And I think I had a Sega Saturn at the time. And you could play, you could put CDs in as well as the games. So I had Sega Rally and Tekken and all that. And was it Tekken? No, it was PlayStation, wasn't it? I think it was Virtua Fighter. Anyway, I realised you could put actual CDs in there. So just out of interest, I've met John and we were sort of playing football together and chatting about being in a band, and we played for the same football team. I think just one Saturday we're in town in Sheffield, and I just decided to take my, whatever it was, £2 or £3 to to the counter to buy a CD single because they were a lot cheaper back then, and CD singles were a bit more of a less risky investment. It's only going to cost you a couple of quid. And I bought Space and their song "You and Me Versus the World," and I put that on. I remember thinking it's just an instant hit of a song that, and it just gets you straight away. And just playing it through a crappy TV through a Sega Saturn. But that was the first CD single that I bought.
Great track. Great track. I had Tommy from Space On, I think in episode 70, quite a while ago. He's an absolute legend, absolute lovely bloke. And I love the way it comes full circle when people talk about their first records, and that's actually a record from Space. So Maz, I guess you said when you first started learning guitar, it was a bit boring, a bit laborious. So what was there a moment where you thought, actually, now I actually want to start playing and actually get in a band with my mates?
Yeah, well, I've probably mentioned him quite a few times in this podcast, but John had a guitar, and because we played for the same football team, we knew each other, but we weren't really mates at the start. And when you play football, it's not something you really chat about, I suppose. You just turn up for the game and you play, don't you? And then I think after one match, I said, "Oh, do you want to come back to mine and we'll just have a look about, play some more football, play some computer games, and show you my guitar?" And I thought, "Oh yeah, sounds a good idea." And went over and he said, "Oh, look at this," and it was this battered up old like coffin guitar, and he said, "Oh, I've started to play this and I'm not that good, and but one day I want to be in a band and get something started." And I think the sort of things were ticking in my head then, thinking, "Oh, I could do that." Like I remember playing guitar when I was little, and I wasn't that good, but this isn't like your average Spanish guitar or whatever it was that I learned on. This was a proper electric guitar with a little practice. So I had a little go, and I was pretty bad at first. And then he had all these books, all the chord books that you could get for all the bands around at that time, and one of them was Space. He had a Space book, he had Ocean Colour Scene, there was an Oasis one, and I remember just looking at the chord diagrams and thought, right, put your finger here and there, and then you can play the G, and then you just pick it up as you go along. And then he was saying to me, "Oh, you should get a guitar, shouldn't you? And you should get one." I thought, "Oh yeah, I really should, because I can't keep coming down and playing on yours." So the Christmas of 98 or Christmas of 97, got checked for 50 quid off the parents for Christmas. I thought, right, I've got to do it. I've got to get a guitar. See if I can get an amp as well. So I went to a local music shop on London Road in Sheffield, and saw this nice red encore guitar, and John was with me as well, and he said, "Yeah, that looks good. You get that?" Yeah. So just took it off the wall, took it to the counter, and I just said, "Oh, I'll have this, please." And the guy behind the counter went, "Oh, that'll be 50 quid, £50." And then I just gave him the check. I went, "Oh, here you go." And he sort of looked at me and went, "You can't just pay for something with a check." John was just stood there, just laughing at me. First of many scrapes we get into, and I was absolutely dejected. And I thought, "Oh, what do I do?" And it's like, "You need to go to the bank, put your check in the bank, wait for it to clear, take some cash out, because didn't have a card back then or anything, and then come back." So a few days later, cashed the check, came back, and then bought the red guitar, and that was it. I nicked all John's guitar books and took them home, and then my sister gave me the Be Here Now guitar tab book for Christmas, and I was away just every night practicing, highlighting all the little tab parts, trying to learn Stand By Me, playing along, and I got an amp as well. So that was really the beginning point of it.
And in terms of bands, you've been in bands with John pretty much since then, I think, is it fair to say?
Well, yeah. It wasn't really a band, it was just me and him jamming as you do, and then it's about trying to find like-minded people, and the two became like a three, because you don't know anything at that point. You haven't, or your only reference points are either people that you know in bands, or all these like super famous bands that you just think they're all 15 years older than you, and you've no idea really how they've got there. So we'd be watching films like the Beatles anthology when it came out, and John had it on VHS, and we used to watch that all the time. And we'd watch Backbeat, which is the sort of fictional film about the Beatles in Hamburg. And watching that, you think that's how you sort of start piecing together what it must be like to try and start a band. And it's usually mates, isn't it, or people like So we'd just be there writing down on pieces of paper. Right, we've got a friend who lives on this street, and I think he could play bass. And then we've got another mate who lives a little bit further down the road at 27. We've heard a drum kit blasting out of his bedroom window. He could be good. And we just used to plot it like that. And we used to think, right, every few weeks someone would come along and they'd either be crap or they'd be great. And it slowly started becoming a band when we'd force people that they couldn't leave, but had to stay. We were starting to write these songs, and John was really good at writing lyrics then, and they'd be just about nonsense, just like anything. And we didn't know what chord followed another chord, but I think having these books and learning other people's songs, it slowly starts to dawn on you that's actually quite hard to write a song. But it was just an innocent time, so you're just having a laugh, and you're not really thinking anything will come of it. But as you start to get better at it, that's when the light bulb moment hits you, where you're like, actually, yeah, you can actually sing. And John was like, yeah, you're actually getting quite good on the guitar playing lead. And we used to have a crappy cassette player, and we'd record ourselves playing these early songs we'd write together, and then we'd have silly band names and just trying to get people from school to play, and just constant rotation of people. But it was always me and John, so we played in church halls, we played at people's 17th birthday parties, just like people's living rooms, like anywhere we could play, we'd play. And this is 10 years before Little Man Tate really picked off. And from that, you practice and you just hone your craft. And a year or so later, we're playing in Sheffield, and we managed to start actually getting into the gig circuit in Sheffield in late 98, early 99, and it was amazing. It was like, wow, we're in with grown-up people in bands, and it was a really fantastic time, that.
It sounds like an amazing time to kind of, I guess, learn your trade. So I guess by the time Little Man Tate forms, you were kind of ready and had the songs, or still kind of building your repertoire?
Yeah, we've been in. I think by that point we did a few covers gigs. We used to do function events and walkabouts in town, and with that was still me and John on bass. I think we had a different drummer. So I think when you're doing that, it gets a bit soulless. And although it can earn you good money, I think in the back of our heads we were always thinking, but what if we did try and write again? Because before we were doing covers gigs, we've been in other bands and not successful, and they were running the course and never really getting anywhere. So after you've done a few awful covers gigs, you start to think, oh, you know what, let's just kind of go back to the drawing board and just wipe the slate clean and start again. And we're only 20, 21, 22 at this point, and when you're writing songs at that age, it pours out. So just we've got another 5 songs. Let's try and write these in a different way. And it's still very much in the indie genre, but we started to write more observational lyrics and relatable lyrics and stuff that was more linked to what we were actually doing at the time, which was just being 4 lads in a band and mucking about and going to parties and just having fun and not being too serious. And that was sort of sowed the seeds for Little Man Tate, and we changed the name, became Little Man Tate, and we started gigging again, sacked the covers band off, and then started gigging in small venues around Sheffield, doing little demos, and then just as the kind of attention came on us a little bit, we managed to record some more demos, and it just becomes a constant cycle. And we started getting a few more people at the gigs that we were playing, and managed to sell out a gig, which was amazing. It's a tiny little venue called the Grapes in Sheffield. Then we moved on to another venue called the Boardwalk, and that was 400. And then you start thinking, hang on, there's people like in the venue that I don't know. And like word of mouth is really important for us. And then in came the sort of MySpace generation of having to have a bit of an online presence and like music forums. And through that, word spread quite fast, and we were playing regularly to hundreds of people and getting a real buzz about us. So yeah, we were flying at that point, and that would have been like late 2005, and we'd had a few mentions in the NME. I think like Steve Mack had played us, and yeah, just felt like a real good like old fashioned buzz about a band. And we started to move out of Sheffield and play other venues, and we did all of the. You remember Club Enemy, the nightclubs that we used to do? So you didn't have to worry too much about bringing your own fans, but you'd play at like, I don't know, somewhere like a unique city like Newcastle or somewhere like Huddersfield, and you'd have an indie club night on, and you'd play either, I think it was before the club night kicked off, so you'd be on about 10 o'clock, and then everyone would usually sort of pile in. So that was a good training ground for winning audiences over, because although we were doing well in Sheffield, when you get out of your home city, that's the real challenge. You know, you really are on your own. So you've got to work really hard, and we were gigging loads, and like, we were really tight, and we were able to win a few people over, and it spiraled from there, really.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like at the time you were putting out a lot of singles in very quick succession to kind of build the audience, and I guess build the anticipation to the debut album that eventually came out, About What You Know, which done, I'd say, fairly well, I would say. Number 27 from what...
Yeah, it did well, yeah, but the problem was in those days was the illegal downloading and all of that stuff was still going on. So I think it must have been just as iTunes started? I can't remember, because the first singles that we released did really well, because we did limited edition runs of The Agent, which we did on 7-inch. And this is all before getting signed. But then, the end, when we got signed, we got all the money to record the album. We had the budget for it, but at the end of 2006, it got leaked online. So I think it was January 2007. It came out, and then someone leaked it, and it just it derailed us a little bit. But there was a lot of competition going around then, so I think we'd have released it maybe a little bit sooner. It probably would have done better. But it's just hindsight now. But people had a lot of the songs as well, and a bit like with the Arctic Monkeys when they released their first album, everyone knew the songs because they'd already been released as demos, like the early demos. And we had a similar thing with a lot of our tracks were just put online, and the demos were put online. But the album itself, that got leaked as well. But probably could have got to 25. You know? But yeah, it's all good. We had a great time. Like no complaints or regrets about it at all. A lot of stuff bad. When you get signed, you get a lot of things out of your hands anyway. So part of the thing that deals that bands used to sign them is that balance between having artistic control and, you know, how much a record company can tell you what to do and what songs to put out. And yeah, we were a little bit naive and had to sort of often go with what people told us to do, which looking back is a little bit frustrating. But I mean, I wouldn't change anything. Well, we wouldn't change anything. Looking back at it.
Yeah, and then
we did amazing.
You had to leave V2 Records, right? Or you left because they got bought out by Universal, so that kind of put you in another label. Yeah,
I thought it was in a bit of a pickle, that, because the album, I think, because it was, perhaps it could have been released a little bit later, but we were writing some really good songs then, and the label wanted us to to re-record European Lover, and then sort of almost do like another release of the album and put another track on there called Boy in the Anorak. And that didn't quite work to plan. And then, Universal came in and whatever, they're a massive company, and it's just, they're looking at the books, aren't they, maybe, and load of bands get dropped, some get carried on, and the end of sort of Christmas 2007, we did a massive gig in Blackpool, and it was really weird because like we knew we weren't going to get the second album with V2, and we then just had to give away like a song as a download, the Boy in the Anorak as a download to people as they came into the venue via Bluetooth or something weird like on the phones. And it just it was a real bittersweet moment because that really should have been like a big peak, and it was like album number 2 was going to be ready to go, and then it just didn't quite happen, and we had to then regroup and have a real serious think about whether we've actually had it in us to do another album. But then going into 2008, we did okay, and we managed to pick up another deal with Skin and got a second album out of that. So we did another year of touring that, and then following year, that was the final year. So 2009 was the final year of the band, and that's where we carried on as best we could, and we did a few more tours and things like that. But I think by that point, it was time to call it a day. But we managed to do it without falling out. We managed to do it without hating each other, and we were in total control of it. And we managed to put on 2 amazing gigs in Sheffield in October 2009, and it was incredible. It was just amazing to actually put our own end on it and just say thanks to the fans, because not mention them, but honestly, like the people that used to come and see us and all the characters and like amazing times we had with them was probably the best thing about being in the band, because we were always the band to be out after a gig, having a chat, having a conversation. It was just a brilliant time. When you're in a band like that and you're young and you're drinking a lot, you're not in good physical health, and you're touring all the time, and I don't think, well, I don't know what it's like in the industry today, but I don't think there's enough people working, especially higher up in labels, to actually look after artists and not sort of encourage this kind of constant culture of drinking to excess. And we used to do it all the time, and maybe that had something to do with it, because it just got so tiring after a while. Like, we're going to Europe, and we've got gigs in all around Europe, and you've got to get into the van, and you're thinking in the back of your head, how many people are going to be here? Is it going to be like 100 people, 200, 300? Because if you break through the seal, it must be fantastic, like knowing, right, we've got a 5,000 sellout gig in Berlin or whatever. But we were always scrapping a little bit to try and keep the interest going and trying to get people to come to gigs. And we were still very lucky to have done all that. But especially after the second album, which didn't do as well as the first, and you constantly back of your head, you're thinking, if the second one hasn't done as well, how are we going to really get the motivation to do the third one? We got it in us, and people started to settle down, get married, kids, then your priorities change. And the big thing back then was the stress of, we've got a single coming out, is it going to get on Radio 1? Is it going to get on Radio 2? Like all of that, I think, really probably contributed to us thinking, you know what, let's just go out on high. We don't have to worry about those things again, because even signing with Skint, who were great, like an independent label, it still felt as though there was a lot of pressure riding on things like how many units you've sold, or whether someone's going to play you on the radio. And I remember thinking, I think someone told us Zane Lowe's going to play Trap tonight on Radio 1. And I think we were in Norwich at the time. And we were buzzing. We were thinking, wow, this, it was What Your Boyfriend Said, and it was the lead single off the off the second album. Like, this could be a real catalyst now. And he played it, and then he said, "Oh yeah, Little Man Tate back with a bang." And he never played us again, which we always laugh about now, because at the time we thought, "Oh, he'll play us again next week, won't he?" And he'll play it, and then he never did. Just like so random. And little moments like that, you can look back on it now and laugh, but at the time we're thinking, typical. He plays us once and then he doesn't, and there's just so much. And again, like around that time, there was so many bands out, so many people vying for the same spot and trying to get on this festival and that festival, and it doesn't really feel like that now. But a lot of kind of rivalry going on, and like stuff put in music papers and unnecessarily by enemy and things like that. It's just stoke up a few arguments. So yeah, a bit of a kind of stressful time, but it was tapered with the fact that we had this amazing fan base, and they never let us down, like the hardcore fans, and they were there with us right to the end. So thankful that we've had another chance to give it another go and see a lot of those old faces again, and see the kids. It's like it's a bit weird now, in a good way.
So you spoke about, I guess, like another chance, Maz. So how did that come about? Like, obviously, a lot can happen in the space of 11 years. But how did that come about? Because that actually, when I spoke to a lot of people, lockdown seems to be the catalyst that has made people kind of come out and do stuff that they wouldn't have done previously. But it sounds like this was done before lockdown, but lockdown just postponed it.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, I thought in my head, like, Little Man Tate's done, like that is it, because we controlled everything towards the end, and we, like I said, we did the 2 gigs, and John was happy doing some solo gigs, and he released a couple of albums on his own. I'd played with him a couple of times live, and that was great. Like, we weren't there thinking, but this is not as good as Little Man Tate, is it? He was just enjoying doing that, and then years went by, and I think he would often send us a message and say, "Oh, you're someone like, like the Lead Mill in Sheffield. They've said they've given us an offer. Like, do we want to reform? Do we want to come back and do a couple of gigs?" And it was always a bit, when you just straight away you just think that's just not a good idea. Not ready for it. I was living in London at the time, and just didn't really feel like I wanted to do it. And then John said as well, like, I've said no, but if you want to do it, it's fine. I thought, we'll just reform without you, John. Yeah, that'll be easy. But I didn't want to do it anyway. And then I think another one came in, that festival, I can't remember where, but these little sort of random messages, and just really strange, because I knocked about with John quite a lot before, the band in the early days took off. So we were always good mates, but then, you do think, I wonder what Dan's up to, I wonder what Ben's up to. And then, just lost touch a little bit. And then all of a sudden, I get a message off John just after Christmas 2020 saying, well, we've had another offer in for a reunion show, but this one seems a bit more solid, and I'm up for it. And I just wondered if you were up for it as well, and see what the rest of the lads think. And I said to him, I need to think about it. I couldn't give a straight answer then, and I was really like trying to piece together whether it would be a good idea, because it's a bit like footballer coming out of retirement and then suddenly playing again. It's like, have you still got it? Like, you're a bit older, maybe you've not got what you used to have. And I just kept thinking, but what if it did work? Like, what if it was an amazing night, Sheffield, and constantly doing like devil's advocate? But what if it was what you want it to be? Stop worrying about thinking, you're gonna like tarnish the legacy, or it's not going to be as good as it used to be. I did think about it quite a lot, and in the end, I just said, "We'll just do it then. What's all the commitment is one night at the O2 in Sheffield, and it's going to be at the end of the year. We just smash out, all the songs that everyone loved back in the day. Don't need to write any new stuff, and that'll be it." We all agreed at different points, I think. yeah, let's do it. And then about 3 weeks later, we'd set the Facebook page back open again. We'd not announced that we were reforming. We just opened up the Facebook page up, and we've got people chatting. And I think people had an inkling, obviously. Then we announced that we were going to come back with a gig at the O2, like I said, later on in that year. So we needed to have everything 100% in place, and we then got told we had to stay in our houses for 6 months or whatever. But if you're a musician, you're allowed to work, and yeah, we got around that one. We could rehearse, and the problem I think back then was all of these events were getting put on lately, and then not, and then again they got rescheduled. So yeah, it was a bit of a weird time to have something to book in, not knowing where the country was heading and what was going on with COVID. So it was almost like a little bit of a, is this ever going to happen? Like I remember going through a run and thinking, like listening to the songs that we were going to play, thinking like all these people have bought tickets and we just don't even know if these gigs are going to go ahead. And we'd put another night on that sold out. So there's like whatever it is, like 4,000 people over 2 nights. And then you're just pacing around the house every day thinking, well, how is this going to happen? How are we going to get 2,000 people in a room together? It's just never going to happen. Are they going to have to be, 3 meters apart? Like, what other ways were they're trying to get these gigs to go ahead? So yeah, it just kept getting put back and put back, and then eventually ended in 2021. We did the gigs, and we did 2 consecutive nights. And by this point, because this is like 18 months after we announced that we were coming back, we started to write again and put songs together, and then it just spiraled from there in terms of almost being like we were when we were 15, like writing songs together and writing a load of crap and then thinking that's like abysmal, can't have that. Let's try another one, and we were sending ideas back and forth, and John came down a few times and I went up to Sheffield and started to write together again. And that's what's always been good about Little Man Tate, is the fact that, like a lot of good songwriting partnerships, you get a bit of a blend of 2 styles, and that really works for Little Man Tate. And he'd be sending me lyrics, or I'd send him stuff up, and we just merged it all together. And yeah, before we know it, we're there announcing that we're doing an album. And again, like we've all been in control of it from the start, and that's what's been quite refreshing about it this time. You've not got the label as great as it was being signed and all the fun things that came out of that. This time round, it just felt a little bit more relaxed, and it was great to just be in a little bit more control of what we wanted to do in terms of where we're going to record, what we're going to record, and we've just got a really good team around us now, and it just gave us a lot of good feelings about the band. That wasn't just about thinking we're playing loads of old songs again. Like, we can actually put some new stuff out there and give people a bit of an update of what Little Man Tate is in 2024 now. But it's been fantastic. It's been a bit weird thinking there's a massive gap between album 2 and album 3. So we were never going to really start, smashing up the rule book and doing something too different. But like lyrically, we've tried to adapt it a bit more to what life is like now compared to what it was like 20 years ago.
Well, congratulations, because
I think it's working out favour.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great album. It was released earlier this year, so Welcome to the Rest of Your Life is the album that came out. Congratulations to you, John, and the guys. Fantastic album. Have you been? I guess it's no. Is it a surprise how well it's done, or how well it's been received, or not really? It's a bit of a.
It's really hard when you're responsible for an album where you've heard the songs so many times, and I think every few weeks I might just get back into it and have a listen to it, because it, like, in the mixing stage. We were getting the songs all the time. Right, what's this version like? No, turn that guitar up, turn that guitar down. You know, change this bit, change that bit, and you lose sight of what the album's really about. And because it's gone to lots of people fresh for the first time, that was a real like nervy time to think like what is the reaction that we're going to get from it. And I think everyone who wanted to buy it has got what they needed to get out of it, which is fantastic to hear, because we've had a few good reviews. I think we had one bad one, and you don't really do it for the reviews. And I don't think reviews are as something to be as like, bothered about too much as maybe when we were younger. We know we've written some brilliant songs, and that shows in the reaction that we've had from the fans. And yeah, it's not going to go multi-platinum, is it? But it doesn't matter. Like, we've not done it for that. Like, that's not why we've written a third album. We've written it to show to everyone that we want to soundtrack their lives. And a lot of people who listen to Little Man Tate, they know us a bit, and they know what we're about, and the songs that we've come up with do have a bit of a kind of midlife feel to them, shall we say, like having a bit of a second chance and going through various things a lot of us have in the last few years. Like we've lived life, like we've been through hard times, and I think people appreciate it when there's music out there that can sort of represent maybe life giving you a second chance.
Absolutely.
Or third chance.
Absolutely.
So
if anyone wants to buy it, if anyone's listening and doesn't have it and wants a physical copy, right? People can buy physical copies of his album. It's not just something they can stream. They can actually go and buy a physical copy.
Yes. We HMV have got the green vinyl in stock in most stores and online. And then there's a limited edition blue vinyl, which is signed. They might have gone. There's CDs, cassettes. So everything's out there. So you can get the digital version. But if you head to our website, which is littlemantateofficial.co.uk, there's a link there for all the album stuff, and it's Townsend Records who distributed it. So you can even go on Townsend Records, which I think is where the link takes you anyway, and it's all on there. So yeah, it's had a great response. We're really pleased with like the reaction, and we've got a fairly like decent like online kind of presence. It's weird to think before it was just MySpace and things like that, but it's crazy what you've got to do now to kind of beat algorithms. Not big, well, do you know what I mean? Like, try to get your posts heard and seen by people is pretty tough these days. Like, there's people out there, probably mad Little Man Tate fans, who don't even know we've either reformed or had a third album out, and we don't sort of rely on as national press as much as we used to. But we toured last year, October, November, and that was fantastic. We had a great few weeks touring up and down the country. So I think most people probably by now are aware of it being out, and it's had a great response. And yeah, we've got a gig with the Reytons in July, coming up early July, Clifton Park in Rotherham. They're putting together their own festival where there's us and Jamie Webster playing, and Rosa Docks, and who else? Lucy Spraggan, she's playing. It's going to be a great day, that, and that's what we're aiming for at the moment. Is we've got that, and it's like they've curated their own festival, I suppose, and links a bit to this podcast.
Well, I was going to say, that's almost like a fantasy festival lineup in itself. I'd go to that well, it's not a fantasy festival, is it? That's a proper festival. It's a great lineup. Yeah,
they've chosen all the bands, and they're big fans of ours, and we went to see them when they did Sheffield Arena last September, and they've just blown up, and they're just such a great example of what you can do these days as a new band, where you don't need to rely on massive PR machines and major record labels to get your stuff out there and to do well. And full credit to them for, I think they got number 2 on the last album, number 1 before that. So they're like doing amazing at the minute. So it's a pleasure to be on with them.
Yeah, that'll be a great day. I'm sure that'll be widely spoken about for many more years to come. So, Maz, I always like to ask my guests what they've been listening to at the moment. So I think since the last episode that I put out, the Arcade State album finally came out. I love those boys. It's a fantastic album. I've also got into an Irish band from 2008 called Fighting with Wire that came on my Spotify randomly. I'm absolutely adoring that album. So, Maz, whether it's new or old, what are you listening to at the moment?
Yeah, so I've been listening to a cool band called Flatworms. I don't know if you've heard of them. Supported OCs on a couple of gigs in the last 2-3 years, and they're really good. They're just sort of a bit psychedelic rock, but more not as kind of crazy as the OCs, but a bit more sort of driving, like kind of like simple riffs and rhythms, but like with a bit more of a kind of funky edge. So yeah, check them out. That's Flatworms. And I've been listening to like all the stuff that I'm compiling for the festival. So I've been getting into New Order again, and like lots of like post-punk stuff that I'm getting into, like recently, like Chameleons, who I love, and who else has been on Buzzcocks as well. Anything punky is what I'm into. Love the Clash at the minute. I'm reading Joe Strummer's biography, and it's got some great tales in it, and he's like one of my musical idols. So yeah, got London Calling on vinyl the other week, so I've been playing that as well.
Great album, fantastic album, especially on vinyl as well, right? It's a very special album to have. So this podcast, Maz, all about you getting to collate your fantasy festival. Are you a big fan of festivals? Have you been to many festivals?
Yeah, not as many last year as I'd have liked to have gone to. Like, we played at some festivals. That's like a different sort of feeling, really, because you can never really get out there and get involved in it as much when you're playing. But going wise, like went to Glastonbury in 2011. I've done other festivals where, you know, like day ones, like we've been to Tramlines a couple of times when we've played as well, and that was 2 or 3 years ago. But been to it as well. There's so much out there at the minute, but yeah, it's something that you think about this, especially this time of year. You just want nice weather. You just want to be outside, and yeah, thinking about putting this festival together made me think of maybe trying to get to you later this year.
Absolutely. All right. So we've spoken about festivals. I think it's time, Maz, to do your fantasy festival. So like I said, at the top of the podcast, the aim of the Fantastival Podcast, getting our guests to collate their fantasy festivals. So Maz gets to choose any 5 acts, one of whom must play one of their studio albums in full. And Maz gets to pick what we call an encore, which is a final song that all 5 of his acts can perform together to end his fantasy festival that can be by any band ever existed. So very simple for any first-time listeners. 5 acts take 5 time slots. So I mentioned Chris and Faye in my last episode. They both got to collate a lineup each, which was fantastic. I'm going to mention what Chris put together. So he put together his OX4 Fantasy Festival. He held his in Oxford. In his opening act, he went for Hot Wax. In his super seconds, he went for the Candy Skins. In his midway madness night, he picked Carter, the Unstoppable Sex Machine. In his pre-headline act, he picked... Yeah, first time they've been picked as well after 159 episodes. I
was going to pick them. Our walk-on tune is Sherry Fatman. Every gig we play, we put that on, and we've done that since like we started. And it's great. And I was thinking the other day, do bands still have walk-on tunes? Is that a thing anymore? But we always put it on because it's just such like an anthem song, isn't it? But yeah, maybe they can go on the honourable mention list.
We could
but they're not playing.
I always think the walk-on tune though is a real like good moment in a gig when like music's playing and the lights go down and then you hear that song and then like the blood is racing. I always think that's like a very special moment in a gig.
It is. When we played with The Enemy, We did a tour with them since we reformed, and I suppose they've, in a way, like reformed as well. Not as big a gap that we had, but we supported them, and they had Walk On tuners, Baba O'Reilly, and that was fantastic because like the lights would go down, and then you get that mad like synth intro, whatever it is, and then you just get that doom, doom, doom. What a tune that is, and then they'd come on. So yeah, it's definitely a special moment in the gig, isn't it? As long as it's not. The trick is like if you've got to blow it away with your song when you come on. You can't pick anything too good. Can you?
Yeah. So yeah, the Unstoppable Sex Machine were Chris's Midway Madness. He had Smashing Pumpkins playing Siamese Dream in full for his pre-headline act, and then for his headline act, we let him get away with one. He had a celebration of Charlie Stone. So he had Charlie Stone's, all of her 5 bands play half hour each, but have her as the vocal point. So I let that one go, but it was very good. And it's amazing to see Charlie Stone, who was interactive with the podcast and was absolutely thrilled to be someone's headline act, which is always special. And for his encore, he picked Everybody Needs Somebody to Love from the Blues Brothers. So had all of those acts playing that song. So very cool lineup. Thank you to Chris and Faye once again. So that's how easy it is. But Maz, before you get to tell us your acts and your encore, we need to give your fantasy festival a name, and we need to give it a venue. So, Maz, what are you going to call your fantasy festival?
Right, I've thought about this, and I've just got my book out because I need to put my notes in here. I'm going to call it S2, S6 Festival. And the reason for that is, and I'm going to be a bit cheeky here, but can it be at 2 venues on consecutive nights?
Oh, okay. Yeah, all right, let's do it. Okay, we can do that.
A bit like Lee's Wedding. I got that kind of vibe going on. So S2 is the home of Bramall Lane and the mighty Sheffield United, who I support. But the rest of the lads will support Sheffield Wednesday.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, I'd get grief if I kept the festival at Bramall Lane. So it's going to be S6 is the home of Hillsborough and Sheffield Wednesday. So it's going to be Bramall Lane on the opening night, Friday night, and then which is S2, and then S6 Hillsborough Saturday night. They can finish the festival off. So there we go.
You're a good man, Maz.
S2.
You're a good man. There's not many people who are Sheffield United fans who would take their fantasy festival to Hillsborough for another evening. Well, that's what I'm saying.
I'm trying to be fair. I'm trying to be the spokesman for the band. I don't want all my guitar strings to get ripped off the next rehearsal.
Great stuff. All right. So we've got to have a name. We have got a venue. So before you pick your 5, any acts who you want to shout out, Maz, who you love, but just aren't going to make it into your S2, S6 fantasy festival lineup?
Yeah. So I missed that. First one is Weezer. Love Weezer. Love Blue Album. The Blue Album, 94. And apparently they played in Sheffield around that time, and they're all Sheffield Wednesday fans because they were playing in Sheffield that night. They didn't have anything to do, and someone said, "Oh, go and watch a match at Hillsborough," and they went to watch Sheffield Wednesday play someone, and then they became known as Sheffield Wednesday fans. So can't really have them playing at Bramall Lane on Friday night. Might get some abuse, but I do love that band. And then the Bruce Springsteen, who I'm a massive fan of. He played at Bramall Lane back in 1990, so he's not having another go. So he's going to miss this one. And then Def Leppard, good Sheffield band. They played Bramall Lane recently, so they're not coming on again. And then Rod Stewart, who is again he played a couple of years ago, but for like an old school voice, you can't really beat it, can you? And I love the faces and all the history behind them. So yeah, they're my missed acts.
Great stuff. Some massive and some fantastic acts missing out. Def Leppard have never been picked for a fantasy festival, so they're going to have to wait to at least on episode 161. You mentioned Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Rod Stewart. The Faces got picked only 2 episodes ago for their first ever appearance. I think Weezer haven't been picked often at all. I mean, I love Weezer. That Blue album, like you said, is amazing and is a great album. They've only been picked once, so they're going to have to wait for their next pick as well. So some amazing acts aren't joining us in Hillsborough and Bramall Lane, but 5 lucky acts are. So, Maz, it's 2 o'clock on the Friday. Bramall Lane is buzzing. It's lovely. There's loads of people wearing their Blades tops around. Well, Brian Dean is there. Jan Arga Fjordtoft is there. Paddy Kenny is there. They're all there. So are you. And your open act about to come out. So, Maz, who's going to open S2, S6?
Right, it's got to be, I thought about this, it's just got to be, it doesn't matter if the dad does.
No, Alive Dead, your fantasy, whoever you like.
Got to be Sheffield legend Joe Cocker.
Oh, great shout.
So he comes on, he plays You Can Leave Your Hat On, full Monty style. We're in Sheffield. Everyone's buzzing. Bit of with a little help from friends. What a voice. Like Woodstock appearance from 1969 is just legendary, isn't it? So he comes on and gets the crowd going with the first set.
That's a great shout. Were you ever lucky enough to see Joe Cocker live at all?
No, never live, but like loads of people I know, like especially like older friends. He's always first on the list, and he's one of those people that everyone seems to know someone who knows him. Or it's like I know someone who knows someone. His best mate's cousin is related to Joe Cocker. So he'd have quite a big guest list, I think, for the festival.
Yeah, he'd get all those.
A lot of people know him.
He'd get a lot of people in very early to see him. All right, believe it or not, first time Joe Cocker's ever been picked for a fantasy festival. So he's making his Fantastival debut. So great shout. He's going to play from 2 till 3. We'll take a half-hour break. Then it'll be time for our Super Second, Maz. So who are you going to have follow Joe Cocker and be your Super Seconds act?
So I'm going to go for someone quite a bit different to Joe Cocker, but someone who I've always loved, and especially living like down where I am now, like West Essex, you get a lot of people who are into him, and it's Ian Jury. I'm going for Ian Jury and the Blockhead, and just love like the sort of punkiness of his music, but also like he's quite punky as well. I think that'll go down well at the festival. And apparently his dad used to be a chauffeur and a bus driver, so he can be the one to take all the people playing at the festival from Bramall Lane to Hillsborough the next day.
Amazing stuff. I mean, he's obviously got like a wealth of material. Any songs that you'd have to hear Ian Jury and the Blockheads perform? Yeah,
well, my daughter's favourite is Billy Ricky Dicky, which is off Knee Boots and Panties. And it's such a funny song because it references loads of places around where we live. Like there's Janet from the Isle of Thanet and stuff like that. The lyrics are amazing. Like his wordplay and stuff is brilliant. And they probably finish with probably Hit Me With Your Rhythm Stick, I'd say. But yeah, loads of good like Sweet Gene Vincent, or like just amazing tunes. They'll be banging out. They'll be starting to get the crowd moving a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely will. All right, Ian Jury and the Blockheads, are you going to be a Super Seconds act? Unbelievably, and my notes are definitely right, Ian Jury has never been picked before for a fantasy festival. That I can't believe. So Ian Jury and the Blockheads are your Super Seconds. Maz making their Fantastival debut as well. So 2 new acts on our roster. It's going to be a great hour of music to follow Joe Cocker. We'll take another half-hour break. That'll take us to 5 o'clock, and then it'll be time for your Midway Madness act. So who are you going to have, Maz, perform as your Midway Madness act?
Right, so the next band is someone who I just love, and I know John really likes them as well, and he lent me their singles compilation on CD once. I don't think I've given it him back, but it's James, and they're going to be playing the next slot. And I've got further friends who I know just love James, and like going way back to when they first started. I didn't get into them until like sort of 90. Well, when I first started picking up guitars and listening to Laid and She's a Star and all those like amazing tracks, and then got into them more when I got their album called Seven, and just like an amazing band that have got such different ways of putting quite anthemic songs together, especially for a festival. We were lucky enough to see them play when we played at Tea in the Park one year. I think it was 2007, and James played as well. And lead singer is called Tim Booth, and I'm going to request that they do a cover of one of our songs called House Party at Boothie's, so, which is the song we always finish with. So Booth is going to play Boothie's.
I love that. That's an ingenious shout. I mean, James, right? They're still going. They've literally just released a new album, so still very much relevant in the music scene.
Yeah, I saw them a couple of years ago at Wembley Arena, and then they did an amazing orchestral reinterpretation of their songs, and there's just some amazing reworkings of like all the greatest hits, which is well worth checking out. And yeah, they're always playing, like they're as active as they've ever been. So yeah, massive fan.
Great stuff. All right, James, you're midway at Man. It's going to play from 5 till 6. Only the second time James has been picked for a fantasy festival. So they've been picked before, but the second time they've been picked. All right, so at 6 o'clock, we'll take another half-hour break. So we're 3 acts down. We've got 2 acts left. Your pre-headline act is going to get an hour and a half to play for us from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. So Maz, who are you going to have as your pre-headline act?
Right, so I'm going to go for another fantastic band, a great songwriting partnership of amazing musicians. I'm going to go for Squeeze. They're going to play original lineup with Jules Holland plinky plonking on the piano, and yeah, they'll be doing Up the Junction, Cool for Cats, and they're just like a massive influence on Little Man Tate. So they'll be playing, and when I listen to them, I always just really listen carefully to the lyrics, because I think Chris Difford is an amazing lyricist, and a lot of those songs, especially those early ones, that Pulling Muscles for Michelle, like just brilliant character-based songs. And yeah, I just love that line of I never thought it would happen with me and the girl from Clapham. Like, just a bit like Ian Jury, like looks great at referencing different parts of where they live, and like they're really writing songs about themselves, and that's sort of what Little Man Tate does. We've got songs that reference places in Sheffield and that are real to us, and that's what connects us with a lot of people.
Great shout. All right, Squeeze. Unbelievably, the first time Squeeze have been chosen for a fantasy festival. Squeeze have been spoken about a lot, I think, on the podcast, but always as a missed act. But they're finally making a lineup. So 3 out your 4 acts making their Fantastival debut. So amazing work. I love a bit of Squeeze. I must say, I had the Magic Mod on about a year and a half ago, and every couple of weeks he will tweet the Up the Junction video, and he will have so many people interacting about what a great song it is. Always great to see. All right, Squeeze is going to play for us from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. We'll take 1 more half-hour break, and it'll be time, Maz, for your headline act. So we're going to get 2.5 hours to play. So an amazing first 4 choices. But Maz, who are going to be your S2, S6 headliners?
Right, so I've gone for New Order. I don't know if they've been picked before. I love them anyway, but the link is going to be, because don't all the bands have to play one song together?
Yes, they do, yeah, to close the fantasy festival, yeah.
So, to close the festival, because it's going to be in June 2024, I figured, well, the Euros are on there, and I think they're all English bands or English acts.
Yeah.
So New Order and the rest of the bands are going to come on stage, and they're going to do World in Motion, because it's going to be on the eve of England making it to the finals of Euro 2024. And then we'll win it. We'll win it the next day, or it'll even be like the weekend after we've won it.
Maz, that's a great encore. While it's in my head, what I'm going to let you do, right? John Barnes is unavailable. He said he's not interested in coming to Bramall Lane or Hillsborough. What I'm going to let you do, I'm going to let you pick a Sheffield United player to come out and do the John Barnes part at Bramall Lane, and I'm going to let you pick a Sheffield Wednesday player to come out and do the John Barnes part at Hillsborough.
Oh, right. Yeah, what, like current player?
Any player at all. It could be anyone from David Hurst from Sheffield Wednesday to Barry Bannon, whoever you want to come out.
Yeah, I can just see Barry Bannon doing it. Yeah, it's got to be someone with a bit of character. That's a tough one. We'll go with. I don't know if Wednesday fans would agree with me for this, but I'll go with Carlton Palmer.
Oh, good shout, Carlton Palmer. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, he painted himself a bit back in the day, I thought. He was always a good one. Like when we played each other in derbies, he'd always be up for it. And like he was a good player. I think he'd have the cockiness to pull it off.
I agree. I think you're right on that one. And what about your Sheffield United player? Who are you going to have come out?
Well, a little bit different to Colin Palmer. I think it's a bit cooler. I'm going to go for Brian Dean, but similar era. I think Brian Dean had just lended that sort of that like effortless coolness to it. He wasn't like particularly hot-headed player, so I think he'd be able to remember all the lyrics and deliver it in style.
Great stuff. So you mentioned New Order. This is the first time on the pod that they're headlining a fantasy festival. So they've been chosen twice before. So this is their third time. But why do they headline your? Why having them be your headliners, man?
Yeah. Well, I just love that story. Like going all the way back to Joy Division and watching 24-hour Party People with Steve Coogan as Tony Wilson, like just being a bit like when I watched the Beatles anthologies, like just being completely hooked into the story of how Manchester music changed so much in that sort of late 70s into the 80s, and just always been really fascinated by it. And I went to uni in Manchester, and I've got friends and family that live around there. Like Little Man Tate do really well in Manchester. It's just always like a really big connection to my sort of my taste in music and how I've listened to music growing up. And it's just such a great story, isn't it? Like I've read Hookie's books, like you know, a bit obsessed by it, but I just love them as a band, and it's just such a strange thing or a strange concept sometimes to think that they only existed because of what happened to Ian Curtis, which is really, really sad. And it just makes you question things like what makes you think like what would have happened to Joy Division? Like would they have got the credit like around the world that they have now, but they didn't really have at the time? But New Order would have never happened. But would they have still done the same things with synths and the way that they wrote music had he stayed in the band? But yeah, that's I always think about that. But then as their own band, I think they're just brilliant, aren't they? Like they've shown that they've got the longevity and they've managed to put out album after album. Sad really what happened with Hookie leaving, but then he's doing brilliantly on his own, and they sort of survived quite well without each other. And each of their albums has got a slightly different quality to it, a different feel to it. And I love the fact that when you listen to all like the synthy parts and the kind of like sequence parts, it's all feels as though like they were just being discovered at the time. And Stephen Morris was working it out for himself and plugging things in and just trying things. And and you've got Blue Monday. It's mental, isn't it? Like how they sort of changed music completely with this whole like indie and dance thing going on like way before like Stone Roses and Happy Mondays came along. And yeah, love all their stuff. I just think it's brilliant. So they're my headline act.
Great shout. All right, New Order, a headline in S2, S6. Right, so we've got all our acts and our encore, so let's lock it in. So we have got S2, S6 taking place at Bramall Lane on the Friday, at Hillsborough on the Saturday. Your opening act is Joe Cocker. He'll be followed in your Super Seconds by Ian Drury and the Blockheads. Midway Madness, we've got James. Pre-headline act, we've got Squeeze. And headlining your fantasy festival, we've got New Order. And for your encore, we're going to have World in Motion with special guests Brian Dean at Bramall Lane and special guest Carlton Palmer at Hillsborough. Maz, I think you've put together an epic fantasy festival. You happy to lock that one into our Fantastival vaults?
Yeah, get it on. I'll be stood there watching on the cop at Bramall Lane, Cassie and I over events, and then I might get ill the following day, not quite me.
Amazing. All right, so before we wrap this one up, Maz, what do the next few months look like then for Little Man Tate? You obviously mentioned that you're supporting the Reytons. That seems like it's going to be an incredible day. But what's the rest of the 2024 hold, and I guess maybe beyond for you?
Yeah, it's gone a bit slow, like as we expected. So it's not like suddenly we're going to start announcing loads of new things. And had we had this like conversation at the end of the summer, I'd be saying we've got a tour coming up and we've got an album coming out. We can't wait to play. We might be playing with the Reytons as well, but we've sort of done a lot of the album promotion already now. So we haven't got any plans to do any more touring to support it. But aside from the Reytons gig in July, which you can still get tickets to, I believe, we're not going to be planning to do anything significant unless it works for us all as individuals. So we wish we had more to say, but it is just unfortunately just that one gig, which is going to be immense, but that's not the saying well that's it for the year. It's just we're just not really at a stage where we can start announcing things or saying things are happening. But we've got a few rehearsals coming up. We've got to get a little set together for this Clifton Park gig, and put all our efforts into that really, because it's not a small thing. It's going to be a pretty massive event, and as I said previously, we're going to be absolutely like buzzing to take part in it, and we're just going to keep focused on that.
Great stuff. So if people want to keep up to date with Little Man Tate, Maz, how do people find you on social media? Let's give your website another shout out. Tell us about all the places where people can find the latest news on Little Man Tate.
Yeah, we're on Twitter as Little Man Tate Official, as we are on Facebook and Instagram, and then the website is littlemantateofficial.co.uk. If anyone is interested in downloading or purchasing our new album.
Great stuff. So that is it. Thank you for listening to the 160th episode of the Fantastival Podcast. If you've enjoyed this one, you can subscribe and give the podcast a review on iTunes, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can give us a follow on Spotify. You can also rate the show and comment on each episode. So if you've enjoyed this one, please let us know by doing that on Spotify, or you can also do that on social media. Little Man Tate on Twitter, so is the podcast. You can find us there at Fantastival P. You can also find us on TikTok now, so I go out on little Sunday morning walks and talk about the podcast and the most recent episode, which is great fun, and having great fun doing that. And if you're not on TikTok or Twitter and want to contact the pod, you can email us at fantastivalpodcast@outlook.com. Unfortunately, we don't play music on this podcast. However, I'll make a playlist with Maz, and if you scroll down in the episode description, hit that link, you'll find some tracks from all of Maz's chosen acts there to kind of make the Fantasy Festival seem even more real. So Maz, massive thank you, mate, for being my 160th Fantastival Podcast guest. I've loved hearing the story about Little Man Tate. You've given us a Fantasy Festival lineup to remember. Sheffield will never be the same after this. How have you found being on the podcast?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Really got a lot out of being able to, just talk nice and freely about how the band came about and like my own sort of taste in music. And it does get a bit easier as you get older and you reflect on things that you've done. It's great. It's just like being in the pub and having a chat with your mates. And I've enjoyed putting the festival together, and I'll be hitting play on that playlist when it arrives.
Love it. Well, good luck for the future. I look forward to seeing what's in store, not only for Little Man Tate, but yourself as well. So I'll be back next week with episode number 161. So please make sure to join me for that one. But until then, stay safe, my Fantastival friends. Please continue to spread the word, and that word is Fantastival. Thanks for listening.